Hello everyone! In this video, I'll show you how to use the combination of Eleventy and Tailwind CSS to build this multi-page static website which can be used for a portfolio or a company or a SaaS landing page or just about anything. We'll see how to install and set up the environment, create a couple of pages, make it maintainable and also set up continuous deployment to the server using GitHub and Netlify. Firstly, why Tailwind CSS? If you're watching this video, I'm sure you already know how quick it is to style web pages with Tailwind CSS. You don't have to leave your HTML at all, and with several utility classes available in Tailwind, there's no need to think about class names for each and every element. However, the most common complaints that devs have with Tailwind CSS is that 1. It's hard to look at the huge list of class names in the markup. Especially for simple websites, if we don't use any frameworks, there's no way to create components. So all the markup ends up in a single file and this definitely looks messy. Complaint number 2. Without using components, code is repeated, which means repeating all the utility classes, making it less maintainable. Now these are the exact two problems we'll be solving right now using the static site generator Eleventy along with a templating engine called Nunjucks. No previous knowledge of either of these is required. It's good if you know the basics of Tailwind CSS, but I'll anyway show you the installation and everything so you can learn more about Tailwind in my other courses listed in the playlist above. I'll keep it really simple as always. Let's create a project folder to get started with. Let me call it Eleventy Tailwind. CD into Eleventy Tailwind. And let me open this up in Visual Studio Code. You can use any editor of your choice, but the Tailwind IntelliSense extension in VS Code provides auto-completion for utility classes, and I find it very helpful, so I'll use VS Code. Open a new terminal within this. Now one thing we need is npm, the node package manager for installing Tailwind, Eleventy, Netlify CLI and all of it. Check if you have npm globally installed already using the command npm-v. If you see a version number like this, you're good to go. Otherwise, go to nodejs.org, download and install Node, and npm will get installed along with it. Once you have npm, let's initialize the project with npm init, and I'll use the -y option to initialize it with all the default values. Now the first thing we do is install Eleventy and understand how that works before setting it up with Tailwind CSS. For that, use the command npm install 11t/Eleventy, and I'd like to install this as a dev dependency. That is the recommended option, so add the -d flag. This may take a few minutes. Now this is done. All you'll see is the node modules folder, package.json, and nothing else. But just to verify that it's installed correctly, what we do is let's run the command npx eleventy. And you will see this line wrote 0 files in 0.02 seconds. That means Eleventy is working fine. We see 0 files because we have 0 files. Time to create an index file. So create a new file index.html. Let's create a simple hello world page in plain HTML first. Let me change the title to Eleventy and Tailwind CSS. Let's just add a h1 tag with hello world. Save this, and now if you run the same command npx eleventy, you will see wrote one file, and now you'll see this folder underscore site. This was generated by Eleventy. Let's see what's inside. Inside we have another index.html, and this is exactly the same as what we created. No difference right now, but let's view this in the browser first. I'll close this up. So let's use the command npx eleventy --serve. This makes Eleventy watch the files and keep building them as and when we keep making the changes and saving our files. It also refreshes the browser for us every time. So we can view this in localhost 8080. Yeah, there we see hello world, a simple HTML page. With just HTML files like this, Eleventy does nothing special. So let's try and add a markdown file now, readme.md. Let's simply add a heading again, Eleventy and Tailwind CSS. Save this file and you notice that Eleventy immediately built it, and now within the site folder we have a readme folder, and within this we have an index.html. So it converted the markdown file into a folder and a HTML file like this. So we can view the same in the browser with localhost 8080/readme. Yeah, there you go. So Eleventy lets us use different file types like Markdown, and we can even use different templating engines like Liquid, Nunjucks, Pug, and so on out of the box without any additional configuration. If you've never used any of these templating engines before, not to worry, you'll get introduced to Nunjucks in this video. Now let me close all of this. We don't need the README file, so let's delete this for now. Let's also delete the README folder from the site. Alright, now let's style this index.html with regular CSS first. So let me add a style sheet. Let's call it styles.css and create this file styles.css right here in the root, and let's say h1 color blue. And now you would expect that this will automatically get the color blue, but if you look, okay, let's go back to index. Yeah, if you look at this, we don't see this color blue. Let's see why. Let's view page source and go to the styles.css. You'll see something very random, and then you can actually see that cannot get styles.css. This happened because we created styles.css here, but we didn't tell Eleventy to copy it within the site folder. So you can do this in two ways. You can create the styles.css right here within the site folder, or you can create an Eleventy config file. So let's do that because that's obviously a better way to do it. So new file .eleventy.js. So by default, there is no such file. You will have to create this configuration file if you want to add something like this. Now, let's go to Eleventy documentation, eleventy.dev. Here's the docs. And if you scroll down here, under configuration, the first link, pass-through file copy. Scroll down here and something like this is what you need to do. So here, if you want to copy the entire image folder into site/image, this is what you do. So let's just copy this much right now and add it here. Here, what we want is we want to copy just styles.css into the site folder. So this is what we need to do. Now when you save it and Eleventy has built, you'll see that styles.css is available. And if you look at the browser, our h1 tag is of color blue now. Great. So this is the very basic stuff of Eleventy you need to know before we add Tailwind CSS. Alright, now let's delete all of this and start from scratch. So close this up. With eleventy.js, the config file, I'll just comment out this line. We will need this later. Close all of this and also delete them from here. Delete the styles.css. Delete the styles.css within site folder as well. Alright, now it's time to start from the beginning. That is, start installing Tailwind CSS. For that, let's open a new tab in terminal. And referring to the documentation of Tailwind CSS, let's install it. tailwindcss.com, go to docs, installation, and there are multiple ways of installing Tailwind CSS. The different ways I have covered in a different video, which you can find in the link above. With this project, we will be using the first way of installation, Tailwind CLI, which is also the simplest one. So starting from the beginning, let's install in Tailwind CSS as a dev dependency, npm install -d Tailwind CSS. Once this is done, let's initialize it by creating a Tailwind config file, npx tailwind css init. This will create the tailwind.config.js in the project root. This is where this is the file that just got created. Let's see what next. Configure your template paths. So we have the skeletal structure of the config file where we need to specify the paths where we're using our Tailwind CSS utility classes. If you don't understand it entirely, I'll explain in a minute. So all you need to do is copy this line from here. Everything else is the same. So paste this here. So what we are saying is, if we have an src folder, look into the src folder, and within this, wherever you find .html files or .js files, look at the Tailwind utility classes in those files, and then using Tailwind CSS convert them. So that's what it is in pure English. But since we don't have an src folder, instead we have the underscore site folder. Let's replace this with underscore site. We do have .html files, and soon we'll also have .njk files. Njk is the file extension for Nunjucks files, the template that we will be using. So change this JS to njk and we're good to go. Let's look at the next step. Add the Tailwind directives to your CSS. So whichever is our main CSS file, we need to add these three directives. Copy this. We don't have a main CSS file yet, so let's just create one in the root. And you can call it anything. Let me just call it tailwind.css. I'll paste the directives here, save the file. Let's see what next. Start the Tailwind CLI build process. So we need to take this input file that we just created and output it into wherever we need to use it. So this will be the actual usable CSS file. So copy this, and this is the command you need to run. That is npx tailwind css, which says use tailwind css, and the input file here will be ./tailwind.css because we just created it at the project root, and the output file -o stands for output. The output file will be underscore site. Within that, let's also create another CSS folder to keep it more organized. Underscore site /css/styles.css. That would be great. And the watch flag here watches the files for changes. So whenever you add new Tailwind utility classes, they will automatically be built. Hit enter. And great, it is watching the files and building. Let's see what next. Alright, so Tailwind seems to be installed. We just have to start using Tailwind in our HTML by linking the style sheet correctly. Let's see what we have now. Now we have just styles.css, but let's just add the CSS folder. So /css/styles.css will be the correct URL. We already have the CSS folder created because we started the build process, right? So great. For this to work, let's just add some Tailwind classes like text 4XL, font bold, and then text blue 600. Yeah. Now save the file. Let's check if Eleventy built it. So let's keep the first terminal tab open because in case Eleventy throws some errors, we'll be able to see them here. Right now, we don't have any errors. Looks like it should be working fine. Let's open this and refresh once. Yeah, we do have the text blue 600, font bold, and text 4XL, which means Tailwind is working perfectly fine. Now let's proceed to build this multi-page static website using Tailwind and Eleventy. This has two pages like we already saw, the home and about. So you can notice that we have a common header and a common footer for both the pages, just like how it is in all the static websites. Now using the power of Eleventy, let's create layouts, separate headers, footers, sections, and all of these. Let's see how to make our code more maintainable. Let's start from the beginning. Right now we only have an index.html. Let's close these two. But what we want is a layout file which this index.html can import. And that layout will have all of this included because this is common among all the pages. It's time to create that. So in our root, let's create a new folder underscore includes. This is what Eleventy will check for layouts and partials. Within the includes folder, create another folder, layouts, and within the layouts folder, let's create our base layout, or you could even call it the main layout. And this will be an Nunjucks file because that's is the templating engine we need to use. We can't just have HTML files and have different components, right? So we'll be using Nunjucks right now. The file extension is NJK. So create this file, and all we do is copy this entire thing, paste it here, and in the index.html we will only retain the h1 tag. Okay, now let's see how to import this layout into index.html. Now in this layout we will need to remove this, and whatever content we want in our pages goes in here, right? So we need to use flower braces like this, double curly braces, and add our content. So whatever content we add here by extending this layout, that comes here. We'll see it in action in a minute. So save this file. This is done. Now in index.html, we'll have to first change this extension also to Nunjucks. So rename this to NJK. Now this is also a Nunjucks file, and using the YAML front matter, if you're not very familiar with what it is, don't worry, it's just metadata associated with this document. And you can mention the metadata, it's just like variables. You can mention them within 3 dashes like this. You can add your metadata right here. For example, we need to mention that this particular page is extending a layout, that is the base layout, right? That's done using the layout key and then the path to the layout, which is layouts/base.njk. Notice that we didn't have to mention underscore includes because that's assumed. All the layouts will be within the includes folder. Now that's it. This should actually work. So this particular thing will now get injected into the content and we should be able to see this page. Let's see if this works. Save the file, look at the browser. Oh great, the content, yes, it is being included, but we're not seeing HTML here because we simply used content here, right? So in case you're using text files, MD files, or any of that, it'll directly be injected. If you're using HTML, you need to add this safe filter. So that way, all the tags will retain their functionality. So save this file, and now let's look at it. Great. We do have the h1 tag the way we want, styled with Tailwind CSS. Alright, we have the layout. Time to create the header and footer. That will be done within the includes folder again, but inside another folder called partials. Now within partials, create a new file underscore header.html. By convention, it's good to start these partial names with underscore. So one is header, the other one is footer. Okay, so within header, let's add the header tag and let's just say this is header just to verify if it's working. And within footer, let's do the same. Change this to footer, and this header and footer will again go within the base layout right here. So how do we include these files? How do we include the header file? Using curly brace and a percentage symbol. In Nunjucks, this is how you include different files. using the include keyword and mentioning the path right here. So once again, the path doesn't have to have this includes. You can simply start with partials slash underscore header dot html. I think even this is not required. And the same with footer underscore footer dot html. Okay, let's verify this. Yeah, okay, we didn't change the text here. So this is footer and this works. Now let's add the real header and the footer. This header has the image and the navigation with two links. So let's go to VS Code and replace this with the image on the left. Let's add some Tailwind utility classes, which is w full, width full, background white, flex because we want the logo on the left and the navigation on the right. Let's add justify between to stretch them out, and items center to keep them vertically centered, and some horizontal padding along with some vertical padding. Great. Here comes the logo. I have added the logo within the assets folder here in the root. Assets, I've added the logo along with the hero image, which we see on the hero section. You can either copy these files from the GitHub repository linked with this video, or you can use your own images. So image src slash assets slash logo.svg, alt is logo, and let's add a height to this of, let's say, h12, which is 48 pixels. That's fine. Let's surround this with a tags. All right. Now notice that this assets folder will automatically not be copied inside the site folder. That's what we need to do, right? So if you remember, we did that with the using the Eleventy config file. We copied the styles.css from the root into site folder. That's exactly what we need to do now as well. So copy the entire assets folder from root to site. Do we have it? Yes, I saved the file, so we have it already here. Now you can add whatever images you want to be used in the assets folder and not have to worry about it. Let's go back to our header. I will close all of these for now. Let the footer be. And now let's add the navigation links. Nav ul li a href. This is the root, so the first link is home, and the second link is about and slash about. We'll create this in a few minutes. Well, let's add some classes. Now this will be flex as well. Flex with, say, gap 10. And yeah, let the font be semi-bold and text SM. This should look fine. Let's see what this gives us. And yes, for some reason this is not, oh sorry, I should include this also here. Yes. So now let's see. Great, we do have both the links, we have the logo here on the left. Perfect. Let's change the footer as well. Footer, small, copyrights, anything, any content will do here. All rights reserved. And then this will again be bg white, w full, text center, and some horizontal padding and some vertical padding too. Let's see. Yeah, we have copyrights, but of course we want this sticking to the bottom, correct? For this, let's use flexbox again on the whole body itself. So that can be done in the layout file. So in the base layout, add some classes to the body itself, that is class min height screen, and that's when you can use flex and stretch the contents. Flex col, okay, flex in the column direction. Now along with this, to the footer let's add a margin top auto, because only then it will be only then it will be pushed to the bottom. This should work. And yes, it does. We have the footer at the bottom no matter what the length of the content is, so you don't have to worry about it. This is good. Maybe let's increase some horizontal padding to px8 here and here as well. And maybe at the we can do px6 here, and the MD breakpoint we can do px8. Let's do the same here also. But yeah, this is not a pure Tailwind CSS tutorial. There are many other videos of mine that you can go through for things like this, px8. Okay, we created a layout. We are including the header and footer. Now let's go ahead and create the hero section. Okay, for that I will close up all of these. And let's remove this also. This is where the hero section comes. The hero section is this particular block with a nice gradient background, an image on the left and the text on the right. Now to save time, I'll not be walking you through how to put this image on the left and text on the right. This is I've done this in almost every tutorial of mine, so I'll copy the code and you can go through it in detail. So let's paste this in index.njk here. Yeah, this is the hero sections code. It's nothing, it's just a BG gradient to bottom right from cyan to purple and some padding, and then the div with, I have used grid, you can use flex also, with grid columns 1 on mobile and after MD breakpoint grid columns 2. So the image on the in the first column and this content with h1 and paragraph on the second column on the desktop. So this is what we have here. Let's look at the browser, and yeah, perfect. We have this exactly in place. But let's go back to the code. So now if you continue adding all the sections in index.njk, we'll again face the same problem, right? Everything will be in one file and it looks very messy. These many lines is okay, up to 20 lines. Maybe you can just scroll and you'll find the h1 tag you need, you'll find the paragraph. If you have to change some styles, you can do that. This doesn't look much difficult on the eyes. But if you have more sections, it'll get very tough, which is why now what we'll do is similar to what we did with partials. Let's create another folder, sorry, not within layouts, within includes another folder and call it sections. So all of these individual sections that we create can go under this folder. So within this, now create a new file, hero.html, for the hero section. Copy this entire section's code, rather cut it from here, paste it into hero and just include it here the way we included the header and footer. Include sections slash hero.html. Now let's check if we have some errors. No, we don't have any errors. Let's open the browser and yes, we still have it right here. Now the code is much cleaner. In index, you will only have as many lines as many sections you have, and whenever you want to make changes to a particular section, you can simply go to that file and make changes. Great. Next, let's add the services section. So create a new file here, services.html, and in index, let's add another line, services.html, and here let me copy the code for first two lines and paste it here. So we have the header, we have the heading and a paragraph. Let's see if this is included. Refresh, and yes, we have this here. This text looks very dark. I think I forgot to include a class in the base layout, which is text gray 700. This is usually what I add to the body tag itself. Now I'll close this. So we have our heading and our paragraph here. Yeah, now this looks much better. All right, next we add each of these services, right? Now this part I will walk you through creating it, and I'll tell you why also. So let's create each of these services. Firstly, this could be a grid, and grid calls 1 on mobile, and after the MD breakpoint it could be grid calls 3 with a gap of maybe 10 or even 8, and then let this have a max width of 5 pixel so that it's not too spread out. And when we do this, we want the content at the center, so MX auto. Now these Tailwind classes are not ordered properly. You can use the Prettier plugin to order it. I'm not going to go into details of this. You can Google it out. Prettier plugin for Tailwind CSS. It has a opinionated ordering for these. Now within this div, let's add the first section with a h3 and then a paragraph. Let me copy the content from here and then the paragraph, and then we have this colored div right here, so let's add a simple empty div for that. Now this entire div has a padding p6 and then background white, bg white. It has a slight border, so which is border gray 100, and then the first div has a small shadow, so shadow sm, and then the color div here has a width 12 maybe, height of 1.5, and then a bg, I guess that's cyan 400 or cyan 300. Okay, the h3 here has a semi-bold font, so font semi-bold, text excel, and margin top of maybe 2.5. So don't worry about these numbers, you will arrive at them slowly. You can try 2, you can try 4, and slowly you'll understand what is the most ideal value. Here empty 2.5 is equivalent to 0.625 rem, which is 10 pixels. Okay, and then the paragraph has an empty 4, I guess, and then a text gray 600. All right, let's see what this gives us. Yeah, we have a rounded corners and then some margin top on the section. So rounded LG and some margin top here, empty 12. Refresh. Yeah. So we have the first section ready, and now we have to repeat this 2 more times with a different color here, with a different heading and the different paragraph, but all the other styles remain the same. So there are only 3 things that varies: the color, the text, heading text, the paragraph text, and yeah, maybe the shadow here. But we end up repeating this entire div with all the utility classes 3 times, or how many ever times we need that section. Which is why we're using Eleventy and Tailwind CSS to avoid repetition, so we can manage it easily. Tomorrow, if you need a different colored border or maybe a different background, you don't have to change it in 3 places, correct? So what we do is we make use of macros in Nunjucks. Macros are just like functions in programming. We define a macro with some parameters and then pass the arguments and something like that, right? So we will do that right now. This is the one that repeats, right? So let me cut it out of here, create a macro file. You can call this anything, service macro.njk, and then paste that entire div here. And now we define this as a macro using parenthesis percentage with the keyword macro, and give any name to this. Let me call it service, and here are the parameters. Now what are the things that change? One is the shadow. So shadow, and then this color changes. We have pink and a purple. So color, and the heading changes along with the paragraph. So heading and para. So let's change the code to include these parameters. So the shadow comes here, the color here, heading, and then the paragraph. Yeah. And then we need to close this with end macro. Great, this is ready. Now let's rename this to services.njk because we need to call the macro there. And once we rename this, we have this error because here we're including services.html. This doesn't exist anymore. Change this to njk as well. Sorry, so here rounded lg, and yeah, the shadow is the one that is the parameter. And now let's import the macro and call it. So how do we do that? Using the parenthesis, percentage, and then import import the file name, the file path. So sections slash service macro.njk as you can again call this anything. Let me call it macro. And once you import this, let's actually call the macro by saying macro.service. Since we imported this as macro, and then the name of the macro here, the name of the macro here, which is service. So you can include multiple macros here. You can again copy this and say, macro portfolio or something like that, projects, whatever, right? And yeah, call them using that particular name, macro service, and then pass 4 arguments here. The first one is the shadow SM, and then the color, which is BG Cyan 300, then the heading, and then the paragraph. So let me copy the heading from here, paste it here, copy the paragraph, and paste it here. Alright, so we defined a macro, we imported the macro, and then now we are calling it. This should work. We don't have any errors. So let's look at that. Yeah, this is working. We have the same div here with the same color and the same styles. Now let's repeat this twice. All we need to do is repeat calling the macro 2 more times. Okay, let me just add some spacing for visibility, and let's change the center shadow to shadow LG. This color will be pink. The third div, the color will be purple. Let me only change the headings, leave the paragraphs as it is. So this heading is here, and then take this heading, then put it here. Let's hope this works. Yeah, we do have it. The center one with the larger shadow and this pink and purple. Now you see this is definitely one thing, it's more readable. And the second thing, you can make changes here. You can probably change this to text 2XL, and then you're making the change only once, right? That's the benefit of using Eleventy along with Tailwind CSS. Great, the services section is done. Let's add another section here within sections. Create a new file. Let's call it details.html, and let's include that here. And once again, to save time, I'll be copying it and pasting it here. Oh, we have some error, so sorry. It's not details.njk, it's details.html. And let me paste the entire code here. Alright, so it's just a paragraph and a contact us button. You can go through this again in the GitHub repository. So let's save this. and we just, yeah, this is perfect. We have the services and we have the details as well. So now let's create this about file. For now, this is missing. So here, let's close all of this, and here. And now in the place, we have index.njk in the root. We also need to create about.njk in the root itself. Create a new file, about.njk. You can simply copy this much, paste it here. So about also uses the base layout, and here we can create an about section, about.html, create that here, new file, about.html, and then we can copy the content from details itself, paste it here, change the heading to about us, and just remove this. Yeah, we don't need this. Yeah, so let's just remove this div, and yeah, this should be working. So refresh, we do have the about us section. Let's only change the background color of this to bg purple 50 and refresh the page. All right, perfect. You saw how quick it was to create this about us page because we had the entire layout ready with the header and the footer. It just, was so easy. So suppose you have to create 3 more pages, it's very quick. And if you have to make the changes to the header, you don't have to make it in multiple places. At the same time, we're not using any heavy frameworks at all. We are using a very, very lightweight framework. Alright, so this is almost done. The only thing we finally need to do is change the color of these 2 links, that is highlight the one that is currently active. Now we can do this with JavaScript, but again, when we can do it in Eleventy, it's usually better, right? So now let's go back to the header, close all of these again, open only partials, header.html. And now if you're able to detect which URL this is, then we can highlight that particular page, right? Or there's another way, that is from index and about, if we can specify what URL it is, and then we can get that URL parameter here, that is the metadata, and accordingly set the color. Right, so let's change this header.html also to a Nunjucks extension, because we'll be using that functionality, header.njk. Immediately you'll see an error, and we need to change that in the base.njk to header.njk. Okay, and now using metadata in index, I'll specify that this URL is home, and in about, I'll do the same. I'll specify that this URL is about. And now in header, we'll say this has a class of text purple, say 700, if, right? So if the URL is home, so we can do that by using these double curly braces, saying if URL equals home. Let's just test if this works. Refresh the page, and this is not working. Oh, sorry, this also needs to be in single quotes. Only then it'll work, because it's almost like you're echoing this, or you're printing this, right? If by using these double curly braces. Now this should work. Refresh. Yeah, we do have it in purple, and if you click on about page, it's not in purple. So we'll have to repeat that here as well. Class text purple 700 if URL is about. And now refresh. Yeah, great. This is purple when it's about page. This is purple when it's home page. So now, as you saw, we created a simple static website using Nunjucks and Eleventy and Tailwind CSS, and it was really quick. You saw that we have all the setup now done. You can simply go about creating different pages the way we created the about page, the index page, and in about you can add more sections. Now you can add all those sections within this folder. We'll have everything in one place for you to edit, make changes, and maintain it, because tomorrow you never know what section you'll have to change. We don't want to repeat it in multiple places, right? A quick summary, what we did is we first installed Eleventy. You can install Tailwind CSS also along with Eleventy itself. And then we in the tailwind.config.js, we added this particular content because we want Tailwind to check HTML and Nunjuck files within underscore site for it to detect the utility classes and build the CSS. And then we created a layout, and then we created some partials, then we created some sections, and then we added the Eleventy config file also, where we mentioned that we need to pass the assets folder from root into underscore site. If you have more such folders, you can mention them as well here. And finally, we used macros to avoid repeating. Where's that? Yeah, it's within the sections services. We finally used macros to avoid repeating sections of code. You can use macros for maybe something like buttons also. If you're repeating buttons all through the your entire site, you'll want them to be consistent. You can use macros for forms and multiple such things. Make your code a lot more maintainable while enjoying the speed that Tailwind offers you. In the next part of this video, we'll see how to host this website and also build the CI/CD pipeline using Netlify. I hope you loved this video and you learned a lot as well. Don't forget to share it on social media and like it. And of course, I'm sure you've already subscribed to my channel. Bye bye, see you next time. Thank you for watching. Hit a like and share this video ahead. If you enjoyed watching this, don't forget to subscribe below and turn on the notifications so you won't miss a single video from Tyrus.